response to my emotion, all the trauma left unopened, throw it all away and...
Hello everyone, welcome back to The Price is My Life long form edition, where we interview special guests. And today, by the way, we were in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C., and we are producing a video about that right now. Oral arguments, they were recorded, the audio was recorded in federal court, and we'll be producing a video about that and have that to you tomorrow regarding the legality of the First Amendment in Washington, D.C. That's the ability of a journalist to record what someone tells them in the nation's capital. We were sued for fraudulent misrepresentation and wiretapping, both ridiculous torts, and we are fighting for the First Amendment itself. But speaking of being in court in Washington, D.C., and the First Amendment, we're going to have a guest on today whose name is Robert Moses. Robert, nice to see you again.
Morse.
Morse.
There you
Pardon
go.
me.
That's
Morse.
right.
Moses. But Moses is more appropriate, I thought.
Thank you. Well, I definitely felt like it every once in a while I was locked up.
While you were locked up. We have so much to get through that I think this is going to be a two-part. Like, we're going to go for maybe
That's the way it sounds.
an hour and a half, 2 hours, and because there's just so much to go through. He has a new book. When did this come out, by the way?
It came out December 18th.
Last month.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago.
Pretty fresh.
It's called Still There, a story of survival and penance in prison through the eyes of a J6 prisoner. So we have a lot to get through, and I'm just going to give you an introduction. Robert Moses is an Robert Morse. Morse's. I'm going to keep getting this wrong. Morse. What is the origin of that last name?
You know, I think it's English.
English.
And I think when someone came over to Ellis Island, they either subtracted an I or an E.
Took something off.
Yeah.
Like
Because not many people have it.
Like
it's kind of like a one of a
we took
kind.
off one F, so it's they took that in Ellis Island as well.
There you go.
Army veteran who served 3 combat tours of duty in Afghanistan. Army Ranger, 2nd Ranger Battalion, and you were honorably discharged in 2015. You worked as a history teacher after graduating Penn State, and on January 6, 2021, you would be part of some of these altercations in the Capitol, and on June 11th, you'd be arrested and charged with assault.
Yep.
You spoke to me at the Turning Point Convention. We had a little brief conversation, which I was very fascinated by because it got really spiritual and very philosophical. Do we have that clip? Which is this is you next to me and Charlie Kirk, the image of me and Charlie Kirk there in Arizona just last month. Now, you maintain that you acted in self-defense after you watched D.C. police using flashbangs on nonviolent protesters. You've written a book called Still There, and it documents your imprisonment through a series of 41 short stories. Now, while you're in prison, you co-wrote One Question Remains, Your Move, with one of your fellow prisoners. And you join me here today. This is an incredible book. I read it.
Thanks.
And it reminds me of another book called The Gulag Archipelago. Have you heard of this?
Oh, a couple times.
By Alexander Solzhenitsyn?
Well, I quoted the first page, of Still There, which is, it's important that people recognize that what happened across our oceans has crept its way here in America. And so that's the American version of the Gulag Archipelago that you have possession of.
It reminded me of the Gulag Archipelago. And I may not agree with everything you wrote or everything you did. There's a lot I want to talk to you about. And
yeah.
in Alexander Solzhenitsyn's The Gulag Archipelago, he says, "Bless you, prison," which was very counterintuitive for people. Why would you bless prison? But he writes that it spiritually did something for him. It made him confront the truth. It shattered his illusions. It grew him morally and spiritually. It stripped him away of falsehoods. It took everything away from him and taught him lessons that freedom couldn't.
Yes.
Is that what prison did to you, or how would you characterize it, in short, as we jump into this conversation?
I would say I completely agree with that statement. I would also say that in addition to his remarks, I would like to add the concept of the hero's journey. I went through the underworld. And this is a hero's journey that, some are aware of, some aren't. Long story short, the hero's journey begins when the hero is either abducted or volunteers to enter the underworld. The underworld tests the hero in every way, shape, and form, imaginable and unimaginable. As a result, the hero finds an object, whether it's the golden fleece or the Nordic runes or the sacred chalice or the philosopher's stone, if you will, where he didn't want to look, where he didn't even want to go. And that's exactly what happened to me while I was incarcerated. I found something. I think I found a couple things actually, but a deeper faith being one of them. And that's exactly what, according to, the mythic story, is what the hero brings back to the world, the surface world, to revitalize his community. And it can only be found in the underworld journey. So as a result of both his work and mine, we're doing everything we can to save the West from extinction.
A lot of people go through prison and they don't get to where you've gotten. They go to a darker place. What do you attribute getting something positive out of it? What do you attribute that to?
My faith in Christ, first and foremost. I never would have made it out alive had it not been for my faith. But then if you think about the Christian faith, a vast majority of the Bible is written by prisoners. So as you go through the books, whether it's David being incarcerated in a cave or Paul incarcerated by the Romans, that sacred texts are written by prisoners. Jesus did time. So my faith had a lot to do with it, and my awareness in literature, being on the hero's journey, motivated me. But there's a phrase that we repeated to one another while we were locked up, which is, do the time. Don't let the time do you. And so I utilized my time as much as possible because I knew that if I became worse as a result of what they put us through, I would prove my enemies right. So
you're motivated. You were focused on that goal.
I'm also a Ranger.
You're an Army Ranger. That's the thing that struck me about you. That's not an easy thing to be, and you were that, and a history teacher. So this is from your book. You're talking about Apostle Paul. This is from this book called Still There, which is like the January 6th version of Gulag Archipelago. Let's read this quote, and it's got on the screen behind you. Referencing the time of Apostle Paul's writing, he was fully aware of how the Greek hoplite or infantrymen would carry enormous shields into battle against their enemies. You talked about having that shield. I read that in your book a lot, the shield of Christ, or how would you characterize it?
Shield of faith.
Shield of faith. What do you mean by that?
So that's one of the pieces in Ephesians 6 that Paul talks about, which is the armor of God. And what I point out in this verse of the book is that the shield of faith, based off of what Paul is comparing it to, whether it be Greek hoplites or Roman soldiers, is that the shield of faith is not just an offensive weapon, but it's also big enough for two.
Well, let's dive into some more stuff here. There's a lot to get through.
So much.
I mean, I don't even know where to begin.
We could start of the day. We could start with the hard stuff.
So you joined the military and you combat deployments as an Army Ranger. You dropped out of high school at age 18 back in 2011, and you would deploy to Afghanistan. How did that shape you for what we're about to talk about?
Well, I saw what our nation is going to become if good men continue to do nothing. I saw the future of America, and I realized that the devastation of Afghanistan would follow me home. Not just the war-torn communities, but the ineptitude of freedom and the ability, or the inability, to have no idea what individual sovereignty is. No one knows what freedom is over there. They yearn for it, but they've never had it. We have it here, but we take advantage of it. We let it go to waste. That will follow us home. Afghanistan will become America if the next generation do not know how to keep this republic. And so on my first deployment of 3 is when I decided to be a high school history teacher to contribute, like yourself, to ensure that our first world freedoms don't become a third world delicacy to be devoured.
And 11th and 12th grade students, you were teaching them history back in 2017. And this is a picture of you as an Army Ranger. Wow, you look a lot different there.
Yeah, lots happened since.
Like
I'm out of rags, man.
The Stanley Kubrick movie where they shave the hair off in the beginning of Full Metal Jacket.
Right.
You wanted to teach American history because, quote, our nation's founding is a beautiful time. If you could elaborate on that.
Well, it's when very rare races of men walked the earth. People that were extremely well-read, but they weren't just confined to the philosopher's chair. They could also plow a field and build a house. This is when men built a country with their bare hands and their prudent minds. And we miss that in America today. We've taken advantage of the work that they've done, so much so that if we needed to build a house or write a sentence, very few in America could. And so the beauty of the American Revolution, our call to independence, and the buildup to the American Revolution are things that we can actually relate to now, which is actually kind of stunning. But in that, their reliance on God and how much they trusted providence to deliver them from evil of the greatest empire the world had ever seen. Because if you think back then, the British crown was all over. The sun didn't set on the British crown, and they were willing to go to war against the world's greatest empire back then. And if we had that same courage today, tyranny would die on this shore.
What I want to do is go through some passages of your book just to whet the appetite before we jump into the January 6th Capitol footage stuff, which is intense. But I'm more fascinated by the theology and your, I guess, epiphanies that cut to the heart of human nature. This is on page 111. You in prison. Every movement of the body, every spoken word, and I think we have the graphic team, if we can pull it up on the screen. Every movement of the body, every spoken word, every look on the face of an incarcerated individual will ultimately determine whether or not someone will become predator or prey behind bars. I was trapped within the environment of immense danger and volatile circumstances. One wrong statement or idle expression could launch an interaction into violence. I mean, it must have been something else.
Well, and it's also something to be said that the way through that is through self-awareness, discernment. That is a gift from God.
That's the thing I pray for, by the way.
Discernment?
The most important thing.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like, and I hate to interrupt you, but if the people around me are good,
yeah,
then no weapon formed against me shall prosper.
Well, if the Holy Ghost is beside you, that would apply as well.
True. What takes a team, and even Judas, to betray Jesus, right?
Well, not only that, too, it also says that when two or more are gathered, Jesus is with them. So I think we're both correct.
This is also from your book. I'm just going to pull out some random passages, and then we'll jump into J6, and then get back into the book.
Sure.
One day, Ivan, who is Ivan in jail?
Ivan the Great, man.
Ivan the Great?
Oh, yeah.
In prison?
He was one of my teachers, man. Yeah.
He was a J6 prisoner? Or?
He wasn't a J6er. He was, like it says in the hero's journey, people will randomly show up to educate you and guide you through the underworld. He's another one of these individuals.
That's like an Alexandre Dumas novel, The Count of Monte Cristo.
There you go.
He showed up. Have you ever seen that one?
Oh, I read the unabridged version while I was locked up. I had plenty of time, man. So
that's the thing about prison. You get to catch up on your reading.
You do, but you also get to catch up on who you are as a person should you choose.
And should you choose.
Exactly.
So there's two. First, I'll read the one on the screen. Best piece of advice I ever got behind bars. This is for those of you just tuning in, we are live. I love live television. Things go wrong. There's technical glitches. Not the Gulag Archipelago. Still there. This is a new book by Robert A. Morss. Quote, I got behind bars. The best advice came from Ivan the Great. He explained, be cool. Just those two words. While in jail, living under the microscope of the cameras, you got to be cool. What does that mean?
So at any point in time, when predators want to test their prey, the sharks, for example, will bump the object in the water to see if it's something that they can handle or not. That same philosophy is exactly what happens behind bars. And if you remain calm, odds are the shark will find an easier prey. Whether that shark is an inmate or a guard or the federal government, as long as you remain calm and decide to be cool, a lot of problems just pass you by.
How long did it take you to learn that?
Well, I had to learn pretty quick, so maybe 30 seconds.
The only people who can allow anyone to have power over you is you. That's pretty good advice.
Absolutely.
That's pretty good advice. Be cool. This is one of the things you learned.
Be cool, baby.
In prison. Also, if you look at page 138, I wanted to understand, like St. Augustine did in his Confessions. I continue referenced Ephesians chapter 6. I argued that those armor pieces, you're talking about the armor of God that you understand, attributes were deliberately chosen to describe the spiritual covering of the believer in a metaphorical way so that the reader could potentially fathom the depths of God's wisdom and to apply its knowledge. Yes. So you continue to talk about having this shield of faith that Paul describes, or as you say here, the breastplate of righteousness.
Yes.
Why not any other piece of armor? So talk more about what you mean by that.
So the breastplate of righteousness obviously comes from Ephesians 6, but it's something that I apply to repeatedly throughout the book, still there, because I explained during one of the Bible studies that according to the way that you behave, which ideally would be in righteousness, there's an armor that would go before you in rooms that you may not enter, where people would be willing to defend you, your character, and who you are as a person because of what they've witnessed, regardless of you being around at the time. So the breastplate of righteousness, though it is something that I do believe is a tangible object as it can be described in Ephesians 6, is also something, metaphorically speaking, in big-brained aspect, is something that can defend you when no one's around. It's something that protects you, like the Holy Ghost.
When you're alone.
Well, when you're alone or when your enemy is alone. This is something that can go before you and prepare the way so that you can be met with success instead of danger.
This is a passage that reminds me of the Gulag Archipelago. This is the last one I'll read. Team, this is, I experienced something inside of me. From the top of my head, I felt as though comfortably warm molasses or honey. And this is similar to what Alexander Solzhenitsyn says is a beneficial calming fluid pours through him. Mm-hmm. Patience.
Yes.
That reminded me a lot. I don't know if you emulated Solzhenitsyn or all paths lead to truth, but I'm going to read this passage. Quote, while I was explaining this revelation of the breastplate of righteousness and the helmet of salvation to your fellow inmates,
yes, sir,
you experienced something strange taking place within you. From the top of your head, you felt as though comfortable, warm molasses or honey was slowly sliding over and within down to your feet. This feeling came with a deep sense of relaxation and healing after I announced the theory of the breastplate of righteousness. When the liquid sensation had reached your toes, the many pains within your body that you tried your best to conceal dissipated. You instantly felt relieved and awakened with a rejuvenating slumber, or as if I had my first drink of water after running a 5K, like endorphins. I was rewarded by a healing serenity. So what happened there? What was going on?
I think it was a spiritual experience, 100%. You know, and I think that you do get rewards for advocating upon God and administering to people. You know, and so these people that were willing to, you know, do what you have done all your life, go into danger and expose the truth underneath, you know, the darkness. There's rewards that are derived for that work. And at the time, for me, it was something that, you know, was soothing and calming. But I do believe that it was a moment where the Holy Ghost just reminded me in the most intimate of ways, you're not alone, and I can fix you and I can fix this. So hang on. Regardless of how much it hurts, I am with you. And that's why we call God Emmanuel.
This is from Gulag Archipelago. And there is one more freedom. No one can deprive you. You have already been deprived of them. What does not exist, not even God can take away. And this is a basic freedom. Did you experience what Solzhenitsyn was talking about?
I did, man.
How so?
I did in the sense that if I were to revert into my own mind far enough, which is something I elaborate on in the book, that there's a chamber within our heads that no tyranny can touch. Not even, you know, the attempts of Satan. It's a place where you and the Holy Ghost can reside. And in there, you get to determine whether or not you're going to respond, you're going to be calm, you're going to be free. And so we're taught that because of Jesus Christ's sacrifice on the cross, we're already free. The price has already been paid, regardless of whether or not we're in chains. And the thing of it is, as we're here on earth, we're kind of enslaved already. Until we die, we're actually free. So our 3D plane doesn't determine our freedom. What happens up here and in here does.
I don't know if people wrestle with their own mortality. Do you think most people do that walk around outside on the street? Do they wrestle? Do they know that they're going to die?
I think they wrestle with it so much that they're exhausted, and that's why they nullify the urge with drugs and alcohol and pornography and distraction. Everybody knows they're going to die, and a lot of people know that when they die, they have hell to pay. But I pray that those people would come to Christ and learn the freedom that I have found and the peace that I have found, because not only is it worth it, that's what our founding fathers allowed for this country to thrive upon within our First Amendment right. They did not wage a war against the greatest empire the world had ever seen on their own volition and their own pride and their own strength. They leaned upon the pillars of the Almighty God, and they entrusted that work for us to continue. And if we can tap into that strength, we can overcome any obstacle.
This is more lines from Gulag. Quote, and this is Alexander Solzhenitsyn talking about the Soviet Union, saying he's been in prison for nothing. You have nothing to repent before the state and its laws. You know, you were in prison.
Yes.
We'll get to what you did in actually just a minute. We're going to pull up the clips from January 6th and talk about the laws and the issues, and I'll ask you some tough questions about that. Did you have anything to repent before the state in prison?
Yeah, well, like I said in my sending speech, I was sad that people did get hurt that day. You know, Ashley Babbitt, Roseanne Boylan, Kevin Greasom, Benjamin Phillips, they were killed that day. And so I'm sad that people's lives were taken. But I showed up that day to protest the stolen election, which we know was robbed from the American people. And I was utilizing my First Amendment right and making my founding fathers proud. And so what happened that day was rough. But I think it ought to happen a lot more often to hold the government accountable and remind them who actually runs the state, as opposed to the people inside that building that we all collected at 2 million strong on January 6th, 2021.
Let's go to that day,
Yes.
January 6th, 2021. And while we pull that clip, do you see the American Revolution in the same light as January 6th?
I think it's similar. Absolutely. But the interesting thing about that is that back in the Revolution, we were fighting tyranny from 3,000 miles away. Now I think we have 3,000 tyrants a mile away. And so that's our problem today in this age. The tyranny that we tried to unchain ourselves from back in the Revolution across the water has wormed its way here into our nation. So there's similarities, but our time is exclusive because it's ours.
Do we have that clip pulled up? This is from January 6th, clip 1. Where are you in this clip?
You can see my little afro poking out from underneath the MAGA hat back then. I haven't cut my hair since.
Which one are you?
Bottom right-hand corner.
Is that you in the bottom, the blue jacket, white hat?
No. That was me there.
Oh, it's
with the hat.
really right
Yep.
there.
Yeah.
You're taking a shield from an officer, right?
Yeah.
Is that a crime?
Robbery, is definitely something that I was convicted of and wouldn't recommend it. But like I've said in numerous interviews since, that though there were facts of the day that are visualized here in videos like this, there's more facts to be considered. Up until that point, the police had been attacking innocent people, provoking violence. And up until that video was shown, the shield wall that you witnessed is something that I actually asked people to create so that they could defend themselves against what the police were doing. And so with the federal informants in the crowd that have been confirmed, and with the Antifa members disguised as Trump supporters within the crowd that has also been confirmed, egging people on, instigating violence, and the Capitol Police officers and Metropolitan Police officers that were also instigating violence amongst the crowd, beating innocent Victoria White near to death, for example, in that very tunnel where I was. These are things that have to be considered when the law should be applied. You have things like crimes of passion, and this is, an issue that is, delicately considered. Well, when you watch women beaten to death in front of you, and you're also now trying to defend yourself and others around you, like your fellow man, I think that has to be considered as well when applying the law.
Let's take a look at clip 2. It's a little hard to hear, but tell me if I have this wrong. You are instructing a crowd to use shields against police. Quote, "Make a shield wall. Where's those effing shields? Let's go." Is that correct? Does that sound right? Okay.
That's me.
Make a shield wall. And the shield wall was against whom?
The Capitol Police officers and Metropolitan Police officers at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the purpose of making the shield wall against the police officers was for what purpose?
Defending our people.
Defending your people who
Absolutely.
are retreating or advancing?
I would say a little bit of both.
Okay.
Because as you can see, if you look into January 6th, there's plenty of video footage where the crowd will stop and will retreat. But then the Capitol Police officers will fire another flashbang in the crowd, where someone within the crowd will make sure that other people, like myself, are pushed into the tunnel. By the way, this is something that never came up in the court of law. I was pushed into the tunnel prior to this video ever being captured by someone who then mysteriously slips behind the police lines without obstruction at all, and then reemerges hours later in a different section of the Capitol. These aren't things that the media wanted to show you. But if you had that footage, it'd be a different story.
Well, I think everything should be recorded.
So do I.
Which is apparently being proposed in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals
Go
right
figure.
now. But we're fighting. Do we have clip 2? Let's play it. Pause. That's you just saying, where's those effing shields? Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where are you going? What is this image of? Where are you going in right now?
So that's the tunnel. There was a lot going on that day. We're under the impression that should we be able to go inside, we would be able to stop the proceeding of a fraudulent election. Mm-hmm. And I do believe that it is every one of our rights and responsibility to prevent an election that would end up being the result to kick off the Ukraine war, which has claimed millions of lives, kick off violence in the Middle East, and then continue to flood our country with millions of immigrants that are raping and killing our women and stabbing them on subways and lighting people on fire. And so if you think about it, the day looks rough, but the result of the Biden regime was a million times worse.
Did you think about the repercussions in this moment when this was happening? Did you think, ooh, I might be arrested for this? I might go to jail for this?
Well, it's interesting to consider because there were moments where, I thought to myself, man, like, what's going on here? I did feel emotionally hijacked. A lot of the videos that you've seen don't include the fact that there were people playing, bagpipes in the background, or people looking like they just walked out of some revolutionary battle with, playing the drums and stuff. And so there's a bunch of emotional stimuli. As a matter of fact, the chemical irritants that they used are exact same as the ones that are used upon infantrymen when they go through the school, like in the gas chamber. So a lot of the veterans in the crowd were actually chemically compelled into a fight or flight response. And so, yes, I was considering like, man, this is kind of crazy. But something also to consider, which I get into in the other book here, is that the entire summer of love, all of 2020, when we watched those Black Lives Matter riots, one goal that they might have wanted to accomplish throughout them all is to condition the mind of the American that behavior like this is okay, because we didn't see any repercussions for any of those peaceful protesters back then. And so when the MAGA community does it, we're subconsciously now conditioned to think that this is what we do in America when we want our way. But that's when the hammer comes down, when you wear a MAGA hat, as opposed to a Black Lives Matter t-shirt.
You mean in the court of law, where the judges?
In the court of law, in media, in social media, everything that they could muster to ruin the MAGA movement, ruin Trump, and ruin my life, from top to bottom, was weaponized against us.
Let's go to the next clip. Let's go to the ICE clip.
We're closely following an operation. Ross has no body cam. He's using his cell phone here. Good's wife says this.
Go get yourself some lunch, big boy.
Before another agent yells for Good to get out of the car. Her wife then yells at her to go. Ross is now in front of the car as Good reverses, then drives forward. Gunfire is heard. Good's car then crashes into two others that are parked. She later dies.
All right, so your take on this incident?
It's a horrific situation. I hate the fact that anybody got hurt, because that's never the goal. But I will say that when it comes to ICE agents trying to keep the people safe from the horrific things that the Biden regime allowed into our country, I support ICE in what they're trying to accomplish, which is keeping us safe from the third world that I watched back on my first deployment in 2012, which I thought was going to stay there, creep its way into America. So at the end of the day, things like these are horrific to watch. But I also know that when it comes to the federal government actually trying to do the right thing and keep people safe, for once, I support them in that.
But do facts matter? Or is it just the umbrella policy objective, like you support ICE, therefore, or you support the correcting the stolen election? Do the actual incident that the facts actually matter?
Always. And that's why the First Amendment is so important for discussion.
Well, in this case, what do you think happened? Was the ICE officer acting in self-defense?
Well, I'd like to see more angles.
Okay.
I'd like to see more context. I'd like to know the backstory. I'd like to know who this agent is. I'd like to know who the other people involved are. I'd like to know the story ahead of time and actually conduct a thorough investigation before I see one clip, react, and then, speak out of turn, shoot myself in the foot.
So we don't know. We don't have all the angles.
Well, I'd like more,
Yeah.
Obviously,
Let's go to, we have more clips from January. Also, let's go to since we talked about justice or injustice in Washington, D.C., let's go to the federal judge in my case, that video throwing the jury verdict out or walking it back, because I think that's kind of interesting.
This is a federal lawsuit over breach of fiduciary duty and misrepresentation. And the judge says, has the jury reached a verdict? The person in the jury that is the leader of the jury says, yes, we have. The judge said, well, we have a problem. He dismisses everyone out of the courtroom. He says, everyone leave except O'Keefe, the defendant, and the lawyers. And we sit there and he says, the jury left the line blank for damages. And it says in the instruction, if you can't agree, leave it blank. Therefore, no damages, right? The federal judge said, well, I think we need to send the jury back to keep deliberating. And my lawyer objected and said, well, but it says if you can't agree, then leave it blank. So they go back. 20 minutes later, the jurors come back, and it's blank again. The judge looked at it and said, it's still blank. And to our utter shock, that federal judge sent that jury back in a third time. And then, after some time, the jury comes out, and they put a number down there, $120,000 in damages against Project Veritas. And I couldn't believe it. We're obviously going to appeal it. It's unconstitutional. It's wrong. It's an indictment against journalism. Whether you like me or not, it's not about politics. It's about the First Amendment. We'll appeal it to the D.C. Circuit Court and all the way to the United States Supreme Court if we must. Inside every one of us is a temptation to give up. It is a temptation to bend over and to say, I can't take the pain, I can't take the abuse of the system, which when it cannot persuade, it propagandizes, it uses tyranny. When I have the full weight and force of the federal government, the state governments, hell, even the courts are trying to abuse us for doing our jobs. But I can assure you that I will never give up.
So, I mean, that was a First Amendment issue, literally, where it was just recording somebody.
Right.
Not stealing a shield. So how do we know in your case this is an abuse of the system? How do we know that it's... And I mean, well, first of all, I mean, you know, what punishment do you think you deserved, if any?
Sure. I've said on multiple recordings that if, I'm charged with trespassing, totally would have owned it. Give me 6 months of
6 months
public service, whatever it was. Like, I think that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But to charge me with a 1512 charge, which is the obstruction of an official proceeding charge, which is something that I really hope you look into after this, knowing that I didn't commit the crime, but then also knowing that it would be unconstitutionally applied. This is a charge that was cooked up in the Enron case years ago. Using this, making sure that this is a charge that can make these guys appear as if they're domestic terrorists because it carries up to 20 years. This miscarriage of justice that the Supreme Court then throws out while I'm incarcerated in 2024. Every single judge that convicted someone of this, they broke the law. So they ought to be investigated for the way that the judges or every single federal judge that convicted someone of the 1512 charge broke the law.
These are D.C. judges.
These are D.C. judges, yes. And
Who is your judge?
Trevor McFadden.
To tell me what you know about him.
Well, I know that he's a McConnell appointee, which I thought would give me
Trump appointee? Or which president?
Yeah, Trump. We call him a McConnell appointee.
I've never heard that before. I mean, I should know this, but you call them McConnell appointees.
Yeah, just because we think that the RNC told Trump, hey, just appoint this guy. He did not stand his ground. He was a Trump-appointed judge. And at first, we thought we had a prayer that our cases would be looked at and everything would be included. For example, like in the Oath Keepers trial, Don and Donna of Cowboy Logic revealed that Judge Mehta totally hid exonerating evidence in their trial so that the Oath Keepers could go down with as much time as they did. This came up over and over and over again in every single one of our trials. The Proud Boys trials, everybody's trial was botched from the get-go. Exonerating evidence, overcharged, trumped up charges. I mean, dude, they tried to throw me in prison for a Lego set.
Was it a bench trial or a jury trial?
I took a bench trial because we also knew that 97% of the voters in D.C. hate Trump.
Been through that.
Right.
The voir dire, the jury selection. That's a whole crazy
Oh,
story.
yeah.
Been through
Psycho
that.
stuff, man.
Well, in my case, I had 2 trannies on the jury.
There you go.
And the other thing that happened is in a civil case, you have 9. In a criminal case, you have 12 jurors. So in my case, you only get so many what's called preemptory strikes, which
Sure.
you didn't have to go through this process. You had a bench trial, so you didn't select jurors. But in my case, you have
Well, we were trying to avoid this.
trying to avoid jury.
What happened to you?
And mine wasn't even criminal; it was civil, which is the case I'm appealing right today before the panel of 3 in D.C. And what happened was one of the guys voted for Hillary Clinton, and by the way, as a reporter, it's like it shouldn't matter whether you're pro-Trump or Hillary on this
Right.
on this issue, but he got up on the bench, and the judge says, "Do you think you can be fair with O'Keefe? Have you ever heard of O'Keefe?" And he goes, "Oh no, I've never heard of anything. I don't know what this is about." And then it's like, you can't really, the judge can't cross-examine the
Sure.
juror, and we ran out of strikes. So the guy gets off of the bench and he winks at me.
No.
Yeah, he winks at
Wow.
me. Which is to say, I just lied under oath, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Wow.
And when that happened, I'm sitting in a federal courtroom in the voir dire, which is the jury selections of a jury trial. I remember I was spiritually overtaken by darkness.
Sure.
Because you're sitting in a sensory deprivation chamber, which is effectively what a federal courtroom is in D.C. It's like Dante's Inferno. It's just a
100%.
horrible place.
Oh, yeah. You can feel it
You were feeling the similar thing
over and over and over again.
in a bench trial.
Yes.
You felt like everyone around you was.
You feel like you're at the bottom of a barrel with guns pointed at you. That's what it feels
That's
like.
one way to put it.
Impending doom is above.
I felt like I was just surrounded by darkness. That everything around me was just hope. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here.
Yes.
Kind of just a hopeless, bitter, dark, ugly, just Kafka-esque nightmare.
Absolutely. Well, that's the result of the Marxist takeover that began in Frankfurt, that came over here in Colombia. We know the story. I read Death of the West by Patrick Buchanan, so I understand how this, became a problem that we're now facing today. But I guarantee you, if these judges were exposed for how they are compromised, because the only way that they allow horrific things like what happened to you and me to be entertained in their courtroom is because someone's got them. Someone has them.
Well, I mean, and I, to be fair, let's put that judge back up on the screen. This guy, your judge, federal judge. If I'm going to make any accusations about a guy, I got to give him a chance to respond. But
Sure.
I just want to know who this is. This is a 2017 federal judge, Honorable Trevor N. McFadden. What's the deal with him? Like you went through a bench trial, and so I gave you a story about my case, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Give me an example, an anecdote from your trial that might shock the audience.
Well, I'd prefer to give one about my sentencing. So,
Okay.
for example,
Sentencing by this judge.
yes.
Okay.
For example, the prosecution was totally allowed to say that, and without any evidence for this whatsoever, that Robert Morss was in the classroom using his ability as a high school history teacher and a ranger to create homegrown terrorists within the classroom. Trevor McFadden nods on. He also said that in the beginning of this entire escapade of a sentencing that he was looking at 90 months or more because I was one of the most violent people there that day, even though that I'm the only one on my 9-man indictment that wasn't charged with a 111B, which is assault with a deadly dangerous weapon. I was charged with a 111A, simple assault, which I could afflict you and had that still apply. But the interesting thing about this individual was when I gave my sentencing speech, I told him how I'm doing everything within my power to use this experience to my betterment, to honor God, and how I was actually leaving that day and got sucked in by the fact that the police were shooting flashbangs at innocent kids. He broke all character, leans in and asks me, "What really happened that day, Robert? Tell me." As if I'm having a conversation with you and I.
Who leaned in?
The judge. And so I explained to him, "Look, man, I was leaving. I have a job interview the following day to be a personal trainer at Anytime Fitness. Taking over the government was not on my agenda,
You were going to be an Anytime Fitness going from a high school teacher?
Well, I was going to do both because, back in the coronavirus days, rent was pretty expensive and I was trying to make do. And but I explained to him how we got sucked in. You know, he saw that I was a good person and doing everything within my power not to let this break me and to honor God. That judge gets up completely unannounced. His crony says, I guess court's in recess. He leaves and goes out the door like he's gone for a bathroom break or smoke break. I'm sitting there looking around at everybody going, what the heck just happened? He comes back in. There's a completely different air to him. So instead of the 90 months, he gives me 66. Though he tells me something I'll never forget, which is, you know, Robert Morss, you had a very impressive career as a Ranger and high school history teacher. It's a shame that you threw it all away, but don't worry, when you get out of prison, you'll still be considered a young man. He dropped that number from 90 to 66 months because I think he went backstage, told his people that he has to answer to, I can't give this kid the amount of time that you want me to. So a number of 66 was agreed upon. There's a wrestling match of conscience within the D.C. area, not just in the courts, but that entire district of whose God will reign supreme at the end of the day. And a lot of people are not worshiping the God that you and I trust. And that's the problem with our court.
So you think 66 was a spiritual?
Potentially.
Potentially. And so you went down from 90 to 66?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you served 3 years?
3.5 years.
Out of a potential 5.5 year sentence?
Yes. Well, the interesting thing was, oddly enough, Trump's First Step Act kicked in. I filed a lawsuit against the warden of my prison and the head of the BOP so that my First Step Act would be applied because it hadn't been up to that point. And so I was doing everything within my power, not just to behave in a righteous way, but also so I could have what was due to me. The law that Trump signed into action is being ignored by the BOP. And as a matter of fact, a little bit of a divergence here. My buddy Barry Ramey, Proud Boy out of Miami, and I were able to track down some of these individuals within the BOP that made it their absolute duty to ruin our lives while we were in their custody, and Joshua Kloeb is among them. Joshua Kloeb has staked his career on making the January 6ers a footstool to climb so that he could get higher up within the ranks on our heads.
Who does he work for?
The BOP.
Okay.
The Bureau of Prisons, yeah. So Joshua Kloeb, there's many others like Miranda Faust, who used the January 6ers to make sure that not only we could be a stepping stone, but to use us to their advantage, suspend our rights, suspend our phone calls, and ruin us and make sure that the First Step Act was not applied to us. And as a matter of fact, we have 2 retired SIS agents that are willing to come forward and divulge even more.
What's SIS?
That's their intelligence unit within the prison. So they're the ones listening to phone calls. They're bilingual. They're trained to detect gang activity within the prisons and stuff. And they were given orders to monitor the January 6ers because we are supposed domestic terrorists. Come to find out, everything that they had been trained to detect, none of us were doing because we're not terrorists. But these SIS agents, that are 2 of them, that are willing to come forward as we speak, Barry Ramey was able to cook up, and there's a litany of issues that are going wrong within the BOP that we can discuss. But that's something that's very important. You want another story that's actually pretty cool?
Sure.
So while I was in the BOP, if we're talking about archipelagos and stuff like that, I was escorted into the chapel one day, and there's a big drug problem in every single BOP, which is nuts. But I was brought into the chapel, and an inmate kind of, escorts me into the inner chamber of the office there. And he opens up a drawer, and it's Chris Burgard's capital punishment. And he says, hey, man, we were told that any January 6ers that are here, you should watch this, but you can't tell anyone that it's here. And in my head, I'm thinking, where am I? Because this can't be America, that a movie has to be smuggled into prison to expose that January 6th is none other than a lobster trap. So that's Chris Bogard's, War on Truth was his sequel, but Capital Punishment was a movie that I got to watch and relive some of the footage that you showed here today, and realize that at least there's people on the outside that are ringing the bell to show that, yes, atrocious things happen on January 6th, but the way that the law was applied to us was an even graver sin.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't, the question is, does the punishment fit the crime?
The process was the punishment.
Well, the process is the punishment, yeah.
Yes, which is illegal if you think about it.
Well, speaking of crimes and process, let's go back to the January 6th clips where we left off, and then we'll get to your incarceration. So what is this clip?
That is prior to me making up my mind that I'm going to get involved.
Making up your mind that you do want to get involved.
I do, yeah. Well, so that was after
And
I
which
had
one is
seen,
you?
The one with the red hat on.
Okay.
The red MAGA hat on. So at that point in time, I had watched several flashbangs explode in front of people's faces. At that point in time, I'd watched several women get shield bashed. At that point in time, I had watched people get batoned in the face. And at that point in time, I had watched not just Antifa and federal agents in the crowd, but also Capitol police officers do everything within their power to try to provoke us into this action. And no, you might not be able to hear it in this clip, but that tower that you see to the right, there's people on megaphones that are also saying, this is it, patriots, do or die. If you don't do something now, you're going to lose your country forever. So with the stimuli of all three parties that I just recited, you've got actual people playing the bagpipes, megaphone people. And if you look closely, that uniform that I'm wearing there too is the exact same uniform that I wore to Afghanistan, all three combat deployments, to show that I had already invested sweat and blood equity into the future of my country. This is serious. If you steal my election, I've got a problem with that. And we have a responsibility to keep this republic by any means necessary. And so that was what I was trying to communicate with wearing the uniform, though everything that they pointed out were tools in order to protect and rescue life, like the medical scissors and, the gauze and, tourniquets and things like that. But they got it twisted so hard to think that I actually dressed up for war.
All right, let's play the clip.
Yeah.
So what just happened?
Yeah, so I had watched the struggle over the bike racks, and I had watched that people were pushing back and forth, and the police were leaning over them, attacking the protesters, and then retreating behind them, and the protesters were left without a chance. So instead of pushing back and forth, I'd realized, well, if we absorb it into the crowd, then maybe we can even the odds.
The gate, the fence, absorb it into the crowd, and you kind of pulled it back there.
Yes.
Okay, next clip. These are all the things that happened. So you were just telling them to back off. That's the baton.
Yeah, so that was the baton moment. And the funny thing about that footage is you don't see me getting hit in the face several times before before I decide I'm going to disarm this police officer and protect myself. And so that's the thing about this footage. And I know you're big on having everything recorded. If only we had more footage of me actually being hit, people being blown up, people being struck, a different story would be told.
What do you think the strongest moment was that was not recorded?
Well, everything was recorded. That's why
every second of your interaction was recorded?
And that's why there was so much of that footage wasn't released.
Oh, it just wasn't released.
100%.
I see.
And so that's why you have to ask those questions.
I misspoke.
Oh,
what was recorded that wasn't released? What's the strongest moment, in your view, that was recorded but wasn't released that would maybe not
change the narrative?
Change the narrative.
Yeah, I would reference that image that my mother actually found when she was poring over the video footage that was, eventually allowed to be seen, which again is illegal, where someone watches me in the mouth of the tunnel. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. And this individual shoves me into the tunnel and then later on disappears behind the police lines and then reemerges. If that was shown in my trial or to a jury, there would have been a completely different conversation.
Probably a jury trial, not a bench trial, though.
Right. But the thing is, the lawyer wouldn't even touch it.
Well, I'm not sure that would work in a jury trial, given the state of D.C. juries, right?
Right. But I think that among many pieces of footage would expose that there was a grand plot at work here. And I think that's the other thing that most people either just allowed to overlook or they decided not to think that these grandmas, these young kids, these people that have no criminal history whatsoever just woke up one day and wanted to raise hell. Not the case. A lot of these people were acting because they're provoked, or they were emotionally taken advantage of, or they were defending themselves or defending others.
Yeah, I hear you. I think one thing that people might say, without me taking a position on it, is why get involved in that? Like, why get grabbing police officers' batons and grabbing fences and taking shields from Capitol police officers? Like, why put yourself in that situation?
Yeah, well, I think, when I hear you speak, I think of the analogy where, if you hear someone being raped, but you think someone else will come and save the day, but everyone else in the neighborhood
Defense
thinks
of
that.
others. I'm hearing a defense of others there.
Exactly.
You were defending other people.
Well, and not just other people, but if you think about it, our Constitution will become extinct if other people don't rise up to defend it.
So defense of others, including defending the Constitution itself.
Absolutely.
Okay, and let's go to the next clip. That's you. You look a lot different. Pause. You look so different. That's you with the hand raised up there. Red arrows pointing at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, your whole face and hair, I guess it's obviously longer now. You haven't cut your hair since that day?
No. Well, I actually haven't cut my hair since they locked us up in March of 2020.
How
House
old are you?
arrest. I'm 32.
Okay, I was going to say not a single gray hair on your head after all the...
I've plucked a couple of them. While I was locked up, I got plucked a couple.
I guess you have enough sufficient time to do that, right?
That and a lot of prayer, man.
A lot of prayer.
Well, there was a metamorphosis that took place.
Yeah.
And one of the arguments that I make in the book is you can actually tell the sins and mistakes of a man by the lines on his face, which is something that I think a lot of people 100 or 200 years ago
interesting.
can understand and
That's
put in their
interesting.
literature.
So you can tell if someone's guilty based upon how wrinkled they are.
Oscar Wilde puts it in his picture of Dorian Gray. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle talks about it in his Sherlock Holmes books. There's information that has been deliberately hid from us so that we can remain naive and the catalyzation of the American can continue.
Well, some of the Maha community say all you need is beef tallow at night.
Beef tallow, creatine.
Creatine, tallow, water,
Water, yeah.
sleep.
Sleep is huge.
Did you get 8 hours a night in prison?
Not at all. And I think that was something that I've actually, as I've tried to recover from, haven't really been able to have yet. A good night's sleep.
Was it one of those puffy mattresses with a sheet on it, or what was it like?
More like a plastic bag with a flat tire inside. That was what you would call a mattress back in the day, on
What
a
about
steel
the
bunk.
sheet, the covering?
Oh, full of holes, disgusting. Yeah, the conditions are horrific.
Do you have a sheet? Do you have a blanket? Do you have what
Sometimes. Sometimes
So
you
when
do.
I was in the parish jail in Louisiana, it was literally a sheet on a green mattress, and they kept the lights on.
Oh, yeah, nonstop. So there's no rest.
And the hard part for me was like I need like a heavy, comforter,
Right.
like a duvet or something. Like I'm a little bit high maintenance when it comes to that
And
shit.
maybe the ability to turn the lights off.
I mean, if I had to choose, I would prefer the lights on with a heavy comforter
Yeah.
to literally a sheet. I can't do a sheet.
Right.
If you go up here, scroll up to the top of this tweet if you could. Ryan Samsel, have you heard of this guy?
I have.
In a closet room, he was held for 5 months in isolation, moved around 17 different facilities. He's been beaten, abused, tortured, neglected. He's been denied due process. Is this accurate? We've got to wait. Is that his on the left? Is he nude, or is that an optical illusion?
I hope
Okay,
he's
it's an
not
optical
nude.
illusion. I thought it was
Yeah.
his dick sticking out. Sorry. So America has become banana republic. Is this correct?
Well, I can say that I don't know how he got a photograph in there, but I do know that we were beaten, we were abused, we were tortured, and we were neglected. As far as the case on Ryan Samsel, I can't say whether or not that was the condition in which he was living. But I also don't know how he got a camera in there because
it's kinda
electronics
strange.
are forbidden.
This is the kind of mattress I slept on in the parish jail.
Oh, yeah,
It
it's-
was green.
it's
it was
tough.
covered in
Yeah.
semen stains.
It's disgusting.
But I was a different circumstance, and they were praying the Quran at 3 or 4 in the morning.
Not okay.
Did they pray the Quran in your jail?
Every single Bureau of Prison is a recruiting camp for the Nation of Islam.
Is that a yes?
That is a big yes.
So you
and
heard
a big
them
problem.
pray. I didn't know what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
The first night, I was like, "What is going on?" It's strange noises. I mean, I was pretty young and naive and
Sure.
innocent. It was like the Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That scene. It was exactly like that scene. You've seen that movie
I have.
with when she's walking through and that guy like ejaculates on her.
Yeah, that happened a lot while I was locked up in Northern Neck Regional Jail, which I would argue is the worst place of them all, not just because the conditions are very comparable to those images there, but they're actually getting away with fraud. So they house both state, local, and federal inmates, but they use a federal budget so that they can keep the state and local taxes for their own benefit. I got a buddy of mine named John Haynes in the Northern Neck Sentinel. That's his newspaper company. That has been on him from day one about how Northern Neck is not only fudging the budget, but how they're also egregiously torturing people in that building. They're feeding them mouse poop infested food that not even a human would devour from boxes that say not for human consumption, with cockroaches that bounce out of it. And
What jail is this? Where is this?
Northern Neck Regional Jail in Warsaw, Virginia. I was there for 13 months, and I was a painter there for 12. I was actually the guy that they would haul up out of bed in the middle of the night, say, hey, we need you to paint over this cry for help or this blood or this mold because we have an inspection coming here soon within a week. So that place is wretched. It's terrible. And John Haynes has a lot of secrets that they do not want exposed out of Virginia.
Deception. Do we have a caller? Did I hear that, producer? Oh, we have people who want to call in. There's the number, 864-713-9868. If you want to speak to Robert Morss, if you're just tuning in, look at that. On X, you can see we're live, we're hosting.
Nice.
The book is called Still There, A Story of Survival. And it reminds me of the Gulag Archipelago. Although Solzhenitsyn just made a private joke about Stalin, you stormed the gates of the capital. I'm not making a judgment. Sometimes people don't like this. They think, oh, James, you need to take a position. Well, I don't really think I need to take a position. I want to understand what happened.
Which is the most important responsibility.
That's my responsibility. That's my passion, is to just get to the reality of the thing, not make a judgment about what you ought to do. I'm trying to figure out what you did. And speaking of what you did, do we have any more clips from January 6th? Let's play this next one. That's you with the shield. No, that's not. That's... There you are. What are you saying?
Shield wall.
What are you saying?
Shield wall.
Shield wall. Shield wall. Meaning what?
Gather shields and assemble to protect yourselves.
To protect yourself.
Absolutely.
Like Vikings. Against the people that were in front of you?
That and around us. So you'll notice very soon, too, that the police are going to overtake us up top, which is where my fiance actually was located around that time. Her name's Olivia Pollack, and they actually just had a documentary come out called, what is it? God Bless America, Baby. It's a good one, but it exposes just how horrific their experience was. They went on the run. So instead of having to go through what I went through for years on end, the Pollack kids actually decided to take off into the woods of Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and let the government work for it. But they actually participated in an American Underground Railroad in modern day time. And their documentary, God Bless America, Baby, is actually kind of following the trials and tribulations of their father, who had to sit back and watch as all that weight of the government that you just discussed was bearing down on his children.
They were fugitives. And how long was it until they got caught?
So I know the brother was a fugitive for about 3 years, and then Olivia was a fugitive for about a year and a half.
Three years.
On the run, in the woods.
It's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
They found him.
They did, yeah. When they finally caught up to him with the helicopter, they were down for about a little over a year. I know that my fiance is like the female Jason Bourne, man, and that's one of the big reasons why I married her.
That's quite a story.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, God Bless America, Baby is...
In the woods, eating what? Sleeping in where?
Well, a lot of that stuff is not for me to say.
Okay.
But what I can tell you is that it was horrific to have stood your ground, to protest the stolen election, and then to be hunted by your own government, understanding that the things that you just saw on the Twitter or everything that I just described in that book would be your fate if you allow them to catch you. So what option do you have?
Do you think it would be better for you to, like, hypothetical question, but it might help inform us, illustrate your epiphanies, to have done what they did, to be a fugitive, or to have served 3 years in this prison?
Well, I think, to kind of bring it back full circle, I know that a part of my journey here on this earth was to suffer well. I thought about it every day. leaving the country or going on the run. But I also knew that while I was a high school history teacher, that the education of my students superseded my time of discomfort. So I got dressed up every single day, put a suit and tie on, and I went to work knowing that the Damocles sword above my head would fall at any moment, and I decided to educate my students as opposed to be on the run.
Sword of Damocles. We're just talking about this morning. Explain to people what that means.
So it's impending doom. It's something that you know can befall you at any point in time, more or less like a curse, but you proceed regardless.
I mean, I think you talk about suffering, and I wrote about this in American Muckraker, that I think even rebellion against the system inevitably causes the muckraker, that's the investigative guy, a fair share of pain, persecution, prosecution, so excruciating that his continuation down the path almost crosses the line into a kind of masochism, just like absolute pain and suffering. And is that just part of life's journey, part of being a patriot? You mentioned suffering.
Yes, I would say there's a fine line between masochism and honor. Masochism is more based on pride, I think, where you take pride in your own suffering because of vanity's sake. Look at me, I'm suffering for this, as opposed to honor's sake, which includes suffering. This is, the Knights Templar or the Crusaders or anybody that ever held a burden on behalf of someone else. Like Christ suffered on behalf of others. He didn't suffer for his own gain.
For his own pride.
For his own
and you
pride.
think the January 6th people do it, they don't suffer for their own pride. They do it for...
I think some did.
I
think
do.
some definitely suffer for their own pride.
What percentage of them?
I think that the amount of people that suffered for their own pride is very small in comparison to the humble origined guy or girl that saw what happened to us on November 3rd in 2020 and showed up that day to do the right thing. I think a lot of people suffered on behalf of their family that either hadn't existed yet or did. I think a lot of people suffered on behalf of their founding documents and founding fathers. And ultimately, a vast majority of the January 6ers suffered on behalf of Almighty God, because to suffer is to know Christ.
That's true.
And I think that in order to be a patriot, suffering is a part of the equation.
Here's the other thing that, I'm trying to find overlaps between what you and I have been through. It's a Venn diagram. We're very different, done very different things. But another thing Solzhenitsyn writes about in Gulag Archipelago, quote, what he learned was it culminated with his wisdom that he described as, quote, I do not rejoice when I find, and I do not weep when I lose.
I would say a similar event has taken place in my life, where it's interesting that you say that I look different from the image.
You look a lot different from that. That was like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the years have been rough, but I've also taken every drop from them. I have used them to my advantage so that I can be a different and better version of myself, to carry the responsibility that I have now, which is to fix history and to save my country, to keep my republic. Like I told you when I first met you, our job is to keep the pendulum, not let
the
it swing.
republic if you can keep it, to
100%.
quote Franklin.
Absolutely.
Right? People don't realize that sometimes we're not a democracy, we're a republic.
Yes.
We're both. But...
And the preamble of the Constitution, it declares whose responsibility it is to do everything. It's of we the people. We're supposed to do this. But we've been lulled into a silence by design. At my gala that I hosted on the 9th for my production company, I proposed the concept of not a sleeping giant, but a poisoned giant that is very much conscious, but is completely asleep at the wheel, in the sense that they're too drugged up, too lazy, too loaded with chemicals, too distracted, and have a false god to worship, so that the poison giant cannot wake up, become healthy, and do what must be done in order to free this nation, like the sleeping giant had back in World War II.
If you go back to the January 6th clips, do we have any more to play? And you're at that. This is like, reminds me of like the Vikings.
Yeah.
You're at that. You're pushing against the officers.
Yeah.
Right there. If you could go back in time, I don't really believe in the concept of regret, because we make decisions we make in the moment, we learn from it. But would you have done it differently?
I don't think so. One, because I became a better man because of my incarceration, so that I have the jewel of wisdom as a treasure. My relationship with Christ is stronger, but they were ruining our country.
If you find yourself in this situation, like present day, you would do that again? You would take a shield and ram it against a bunch of officers trying to hold people back from going into the federal building?
Well, it's like, with the latest shooting video that you just showed. I think context is key.
Context matters.
100%. So do I want to just, disrespect every law enforcement officer with a shield? No. But if an election is stolen, then I think the American people have a responsibility to do whatever it takes to make sure that we, the people, are the ones running this government, not into the ground, but toward heaven, so that we can become a more perfect union. And if it requires whatever it takes in order to do so, I think that has to happen.
What if it requires breaking the law?
Well,
felonies.
Yes, there's a good verse in Acts 5 which says we have to abide by God as opposed to men. And so
we're a nation of laws.
We are a nation of laws, but we're also a nation under God. And so I think that since God comes before the laws that we have written, the laws that we have in America today would encourage infanticide. The laws we have in America today encourage transgender surgeries. These are two very satanic laws that we have in this country.
It's reminiscent of Martin Luther King and the arguments for civil disobedience, which is what you're making.
Well, I think that has to be the arena in which we discover whether or not we're going to be that city on the hill or not. Are we going to be another opportunity for Marxism to, take hold of another country, which we're the last free country in this world, or are we going to surpass all the odds and overcome all the obstacles and make our founding fathers proud, but ultimately our Father in heaven proud? He's all about liberty. God's all about freedom. Jesus came to liberate you from the tyranny of sin, and our Constitution is written to liberate us from the tyranny of government. They're part and parcel of one another. And it's my responsibility, as is yours, to remind the people of that, so that when the time comes for us to stand our ground and say enough is enough, you've come this far, but you're not going to go any further, government, we have the courage and the fortitude to hold that ground, to hold that line, and to hold fast.
Did you see the story we did a couple days ago about the Secret Service protecting the vice president?
Yes. Yeah, very concerning.
Giving away secrets about his whereabouts to a total stranger.
Total stranger.
And it wasn't even so much what he said. It was like the circumstances. I mean, thank God I'm not a foreign spy.
Right.
And then this is about the protection of the
vice president.
The vice president, and his person closest to him is just spilling all the beans.
Well, it makes me think about the Trump assassination in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, like how many other things are like this?
Right. Yeah.
And just exposing it. I mean, I didn't do anything. I just reported on it.
Right.
Sent a shockwave. I mean, they're doing anti-espionage training for all the Secret Service people now.
Right. Well, that also makes me think of Tina Peters, who's still locked up in the state of Colorado. All she did was expose that Colorado should have gone red and that the 2020 election was stolen. But she sits in a jail cell, regardless of a presidential pardon, for the only crime of trying to reveal what the Democrats and some Republicans did in the year of 2020. And so there is a debate between laws of God and of men, because we want to be a nation of laws. But at what point in time do we say that these laws are actually what's sinking us to hell or not? And the First Amendment allows us to have that discussion. Conversations like this allow us to discover, you know what? This law is poorly written. Amendments can be made, and we need to have that First Amendment as sacrosanct so that we can ameliorate our issues with discussion as opposed to violence.
Yeah, I mean, the First Amendment, there are, even journalists, even citizen journalists don't have privileged immunity for committing crimes. I mean, I can't do that. There's a very narrow thing where you can publish something that somebody else did if they committed a crime, as long as you played no part. But I don't have, as a reporter, I don't have privileged immunity to break the law.
Sure.
But the First Amendment is certainly what makes us different. I mean, but where do you draw the line with civil disobedience? I mean, it's okay in this case. You've made your argument clear. You said context matters. This you said the stolen election, God, preservation of the country. Where do you draw that line? Because people die. I mean, people get killed. People get hurt. And it just seems that so. I understand also the country was predicated on the American founding was predicated on a revolution.
Right.
So it's embedded in our DNA.
Revolution
I get
is in
it.
our blood, yeah.
I just don't know how you reconcile these things, and I just want to understand, like, what's the modern day January 6th? Because this was 5 years ago.
Right. Yeah. So I think that, in the future, obviously I would hope that no violence would come to America. However, there's people that have committed acts of treason, which last time I checked, death is the penalty for that. Now, we went through a court to determine whether or not, the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys were treasonous people. But those determinations were held by judges like Judge Mehta or, my judge, where we already knew that it was a kangaroo court. It was fixed. So I would say that your work is paramount, because the more eyes that we have on the public opinion of what's actually happening behind closed doors in courtrooms is important. I would say that the line for action is very similar to our founding documents like the Declaration of Independence. In it, you'll find 27 complaints to the king, where they have exhausted every single remedy to try to prevent violence. And so my response to you is to do your research and fall back on the documents that made us a country in the first place. And if every single complaint to the king is being fulfilled, maybe it's time to act like our ancestors. You
So
can
go
look
back to the American founding documents. It's kind of the Straussian argument. Look at the Declaration of Independence, and in that
You can read
is
it
your-
right now. There's 11 complaints to the king that we can personally relate to. And ironically enough, one of the final complaints to the king is that you have instigated insurrections amongst us and opened our borders to the savages beyond them.
Mm-hmm.
Are we not having to put up with the same stuff right now? And so the struggle against liberty and tyranny is a tale as old as time. Our founding fathers didn't just write documents that were loaded with, rights of the accused and a responsibility for government of our people, by the people, and for the people. They actually codified how to determine whether or not something is tyranny or not.
You're just tuning in. We're talking to an interesting conversation with Robert A. Morss, author of Still There, spent 3 years in prison, wrote a book that's reminiscent of the Gulag Archipelago. Whether you agree or disagree with his political philosophy, it's an interesting perspective. We have on the screen here the U.S. Declaration of Independence, grievances of King George. This is what you're talking about. He's erected a multitude of new offices, sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people, eat their substance. He's kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the content of our legislatures. This is what you're talking about, right?
Absolutely.
Affected to render military independent superior to the civil power, combined with others to subject to justification of foreign to our Constitution, etc. I mean, listen, people are talking about this Secret Service agent that we exposed. I didn't realize how big of a story it actually was, the implications of the story, because, listen, if there's the slightest misstep, not even what you did, but mothers in Colorado, reporters at Project Veritas getting raided by the feds, even the perceived misstep will get you indicted. And this guy's been suspended for sharing national defense secrets.
Well, it gets even worse. The man who murdered Ashley Babbitt, Michael Byrd, is still free.
Speaking of that, Babbitt, let's pull up that clip. We have that clip. Take a look at that clip, and then we'll go into your book for another short while.
Cool.
She might be dying right now.
All right. That's the Ashley Babbitt getting shot, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's horrific, and I've had to watch it 1,000 times, but it's something that I think every American needs to witness so that they understand the depth of that day, for sure.
A few more clips, team, from that day. We have one caller, and then we're going to go into your book and talk about your incarceration a little bit more and some of the things you learned. Go ahead, caller. Steve from Washington, go ahead.
Hey, gentlemen, great to talk to you both. Hey, Robert, I too was with 275, but back in the early 90s, so we missed each other about a few years. And Pam Bondi and Cash Patel have been receiving massive criticism for many reasons over the last year, but maybe the largest reason for the calling for their replacement is the slow rolling of bringing about full justice concerning January 6th. Do you think there's stonewalling and slow rolling to justice we all want to see? And do you think we'll eventually see something substantial, like prosecuting the high-profile figures who set up and orchestrated January 6th?
Yeah, so my response to that is Rangers lead the way. Thanks for calling in. But I will say that it definitely seems as though that a lot of the people within our government are slow rolling justice. But I think the reason for that is because of what we discussed earlier. The judges need to be held accountable, and they need to be removed somehow so that you don't have people like the Clintons, who they recognize, the judges from Epstein Island, get up front of the judge, they get exonerated of their crimes with impunity or whatever, and then the case is closed. So what needs to be fixed is our judicial process so that we can actually see justice, and that takes time.
What is justice? What justice do we want here? Just to
I want these people completely incapable.
Who's these people?
Every Democrat and Republican responsible for January 6th, every Democrat and Republican responsible for the 2020 elections, every Democrat and Republican responsible for the pandemic to be behind bars.
Do you think that's going to happen?
I mean, if Trump's got the guts, it will.
How many people in the deep state have been arrested so far?
Not nearly as many January 6ers were arrested this time 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting perspective. I mean, yeah, they did a good job of rounding all of you guys up
very quickly. And
but
then
you guys are
building
just
the case.
you're a very intelligent guy, but you're a teacher. I mean, all these guys are kind of like from the hinterlands. I'm talking about like how many actual deep state guys have been arrested. I don't know. I can't think of one. Maybe I'm
not
mistaken.
nearly enough. Yeah, I can't think of one either. Yeah, I mean,
has there been one?
I want Maduro to have something to do with it, hopefully, and maybe that's the beginning of the end, But like I said, at the press conference on January 6th, until these people that are responsible for ruining my life and ruining the state of my country are Maduro'd, then we're not going to fix anything. And we're going to have another January 6th very soon. And it might be necessary.
That's quite a statement. Another January 6th. Do we have another caller? Let's go back to your book.
Sure.
Page 155. I'm just going to, maybe this will bring up some more topics of learning. I was forced to live and I was being absolutely crushed with the thought of what this was, what it was doing to the people I care about. I did not understand the instant rage that was targeted at me from people I had broken bread with for years. I was stunned by how the media can say one thing and change how someone sees you forever. But it's not just the sinister influence of the fake news media. A lot of personal frustration and outright rage stem from the recurring idea that many people in my life shared that a choice was made on January 6th. That I had a choice kept coming up as a quasi-excuse for creating distance or cutting ties with me altogether. So this is the idea that I thought that was interesting because you kind of figure out who your friends are and who they aren't when you go through something like this.
Right.
Did people turn on you?
A lot. Yeah.
Almost everybody?
My father has forsaken me. My brother has completely written me off.
Your father has forsaken you?
Yes. The very guy that raised me to listen to Rush Limbaugh while we were in the truck going hunting.
So it was like love, hate? Was it like contrasted very quickly?
I would say within that 4-year period, a lot of people that proclaimed to be patriots showed the world that they were not.
So he doesn't talk to you anymore?
No. He's actually running around wearing dresses right now, married a witch, voted for Kamala Harris, and dissented my pardon. This guy is not...
When did that start happening?
While I was locked up. This guy is not the father who raised me. I was raised to be a Christian conservative,
He's wearing dresses?
Yeah. Yeah, it's embarrassing.
He sounds like he's got other things going on.
You know what I think it is demonic oppression. I think that's befallen my brother. I think that's befallen my uncle.
Do you think that demonic oppression, the proximate cause of that was what happened to you?
Well, it's interesting because so many other people within my family decided to have my back. Like my mother. She did not care what it took. She was going to do everything within her power to liberate me and to free me. And so what happens to someone else shouldn't be an excuse for you to run and hide. It should be an encouragement to be there and defend them. And I think if the American experiment that took place during all of our arrests revealed anything was that the federal government wasn't crushing me just for my own sake and intimidation. They were doing these incredibly egregious acts, unconstitutional acts, to intimidate the rest of America. Don't you dare stand up to tyranny, otherwise this will happen to you. And so, yes, I think fear played a huge role in that. But for some people, no amount of fear was enough to make them turn their back on me. And now, just like you just said, I know who my real friends and family are.
That's probably the hardest part about the process is the people closest to you, the things that you thought that was true about the world are not.
Yeah.
Which is kind of I actually think that's on balance a good thing, because it's the death of innocence, the death of being naive, and being naive is not good, as Jordan Peterson says.
Agreed.
You kind of think of it like it's good, but it's not. It's not. It's not a good thing.
He also, I quote him in this as well, saying that, weakness isn't a sign of being good either.
No.
And so I think a lot of weak people within my life turned their back on me, and very strong people showed up and are always going to have my back because I was strong for them while I was incarcerated. And I think that strength was on loan from God.
This is from your book, page 199. Just little anecdotes I thought that the audience would find interesting. If you call someone a bitch in prison, the recipient has to fight. Has is in capital letters.
Yeah.
The understanding is that if someone were to be called a bitch without anything being done, then the invitation for anything and everything to be done to that individual will occur. Calling someone a bitch is grounds for violence. Did anyone ever call you a bitch in prison?
I was never called that directly face to face, though I think the chapter that you're referring to references a guy named Tyrone who was trying to speak casually around me in that regard. But yeah, there's rules in prison, and your safety, your integrity comes with violence, and violence does solve problems every once in a while.
Did you ever engage in violence in prison?
Ironically, no.
Wow.
For 3.5 years, I was not in a single fight. God
did
delivered
everything
me.
right.
Well, I tried, but I can't take credit for that, though. You see, God delivered me from the lions' dens. He closed their mouths. And because of my ability to reason, negotiate, and to try to encourage people that animals eat each other alive, but men make peace, men negotiate, I was trying to make not just my Father in heaven proud, but also my mother and everyone else who believed in me, everyone who wrote me. But then I also believed, and I think this is the most important part of it, is that if we deny the pleasure of our enemies to point the finger and say, see, we told you, Robert Morss is a monster, and this is why he has to remain in prison, that was my best revenge. I was going to fight back with the right hook of integrity. I was going to prove my enemies wrong about me, against the odds, not taking any bait whatsoever, so that at the end of the day, they would be shamed with their inaccuracy, and I would have all of the standing to say that even though I was forced into a fiery furnace, I still would not bow down to their golden idol.
Is your desire to see these people dealt what you want them to be dealt, is that revenge?
No, because revenge is an emotional response. I think it goes beyond justice. Justice is something that happens after a crime. These people tried to murder a country, and so they're guilty of attempted manslaughter, as far as I'm concerned, against Lady Liberty. But the people that have been doing this for years on end, this is a way of life for them. An entire way of life has taken root in America to destroy the very country that would at any point in time fight to defend them. So there's a crisis of conscience and character at work, which is a contest of gods. So I actually think that something holy has to happen in order for this problem to be fixed, for it to be uprooted. It's not just revenge. Something has to happen that's biblical.
Justice is more about proportionality. Justice is...
But how do you quantify enslaving an entire nation and getting them the vaccine and then stealing an election from them and opening their borders? How do you quantify
there's
that?
a lack of proportionality currently in the United States. There's no one's held accountable for anything.
Except us, if we storm the Capitol in MAGA hat.
Right. And maybe on some level there's a colorable crime there, or a misdemeanor there, or even a felony there. But there's a lack of proportionality for sure.
Without a doubt. So, for example, while I was locked up, there was an individual who punched a black female Capitol Police officer in the face, only got 6 months probation.
Right.
While I'm locked up, never punched anybody in the face that day.
It's about fairness. It's about...
Absolutely.
It's about the equal application, or let's at least all agree that there should be an equal application of the law.
Absolutely.
Which is it's so hard to reconcile this idea of civil disobedience in some ways with the equal application of the law. But that's a subject for part 2 of our interview. We're running out of time almost. So this is from page 210 of your book, I guess, just things you learned in prison.
Yeah.
This is like kind of a stoic meditations that you've written. Team, if you have it, it starts with, one of the boldest things you can do is decide to say, despite my past, instead of saying because of my past. Architects do not erase, they redesign. You do not have to deny what happened, but you must decide what the previous events mean now. If you want the outside world to stop hurting you, you must heal what the outside world is pointing to within you. Are these things that you kind of like came to epiphanies while being in prison?
Yeah.
Meditating?
I would say that, like Solomon asked for wisdom, I too asked for that.
You asked God for wisdom.
I actually asked God to fold my brain in on itself more so that I could retain more information and learn as much as possible. My weapon is my mind.
Did you just pray and it came to you, or did you read? How did
I read, I fasted.
What did you read?
I read a lot of Solzhenitsyn is one. I read Plato's Republic. I read Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan. I read Voltaire's
From the prison
Candide.
library or online?
Either that or it was sent in to me. I read a lot. I read Paradise Lost. I read Cicero's The Ideal Order. I read the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. I read Aristotle.
Did you find that, like what Solzhenitsyn said, is in jail, in our life, we don't have any time. There's never any time, but in prison you have an abundance of time.
Which forces you to confront who you are.
Right.
And that is why there's no time out here. You see, the acronym for busy is being under Satan's yoke. And the whole game that Satan would like to play with you is that you don't have to look at yourself. You don't have to look at yourself in a mirror. Just look at everybody else. Judge everybody else because you're better than everybody else. But what Christ asks you to do is look at me. Look at the stripes that I have taken that you deserve, and humble yourself before me so that I can see you in heaven someday. And so the dichotomy of who you look to in times of strife is what determines whether or not you will be successful at the end of the day. Because you can suffer and you can survive. Plenty of January 6ers made it out of this. We just had a big reunion at the Capitol on January 6th. But it's the way you suffer is what determines the man that you're going to be.
How did that go, that reunion?
It was good. I didn't see any fights. There was some tiffs here and there, but I stayed out of it. I'm flying under the radar, man. I got a production company that I've got. I got 2 books now that I've written. I'm busy. The grass does not grow underneath my feet because I got a country to save, baby.
You're out of jail now you're limited on time again.
Exactly. But the way that this is different than the last time was that I'm completely sober. I've actually taken an oath of celibacy until I'm married.
Were you drinking at the time of January 6th?
I was not. That's a trick question there. No.
Or were you drinking that before that time?
Yeah, I would dabble in the party lifestyle for sure, because that's...
Like socially or all the time?
I would say socially. I was not an alcoholic.
You were not an alcoholic.
No, but I would say that I have learned how much alcohol can slow you down, and I think that's the point of it all. The way that, alcohol forces you to want to eat certain foods, forces you to want to be with certain people.
Yeah.
And then, it's just a way of destruction. And so I have tried to refine myself as much as possible so that I can now create movies that are faith-based, that are also violent and gritty, that inspire the next generation to keep this republic. I want to be able to raise a family and lead them to Christ. I read a really good book called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. I highly recommend that you read it, and you'd understand the way that I think really well from it. But it also points out that the responsibility of the king is to be the conduit in between the Almighty and the people. And you can determine the quality of the water by the character of the king. And if the water is wrong, if the kingdom is dried up, that means there's something wrong with the king because he's using his position for himself. The king's job is to be a highway between the people and the Almighty. And every father is a king of his household. And so I want to be a good rendition of what Christ is supposed to look like for the church so that I can lead my house closer to the Lord. As for me and my house, we will serve him. But I also want to never let my kids feel the way that I did when my father was willing to turn his back on me. I'm going to raise my kids to be patriots, and they will never feel the shame of not having a dad.
You don't want them to feel what you have felt. That's another thing that's suffering. Extreme pain subjected onto someone does, I've found. And
If it's used properly.
if it's used properly, it engenders in you an empathy that you didn't previously have,
Yeah.
which is towards your children.
Yes.
Or it
Or
could
others.
it could go the other way around.
Oh, yeah. It can make you a tyrant to compensate for the lack of control that you had at the time
Correct.
of the pain.
And in my case, I mean, I didn't even commit a crime when I was 25. I was, on supervised house probation for 3 years, and which sounds not that big of a deal, but apparently, like, I was an enemy of the state. They wouldn't let me leave the house without asking for permission. So I didn't have an ankle bracelet on, but
Sure.
I'd go to prison if I left.
Yeah.
And I was really, pitying myself quite a bit.
Well, there's a lot of people like, my buddy Trennis Evans of Condemned USA, who's had to watch his kids get pointed at with loaded guns and lasers on their bodies while he stood powerless. How do you respond from something like that? Him and myself and many others are trying to do everything within our power to use that pain to motivate us to fix this country so that what happened to the January 6er and the nation at large never happens again.
I think what has to happen is somebody has to be arrested for something in our government. Someone has to be held accountable. Like, I don't know. I mean, what do you think about cruel and unusual punishment?
I think it's necessary.
There's a whole conversation about that. The Eighth Amendment. Is it the Eighth
Sure.
Amendment?
Well, I mean,
public hangings and that type of thing.
yeah, I would say that what we went through was definitely cruel and unusual.
You would consider that a violation of the Eighth Amendment?
Without a doubt. I mean, there's so many violations of the Fourth Amendment, my First Amendment,
Yeah.
the 10th Amendment. You got to be kidding me. And so my constitutional rights were completely eviscerated. But what I can say is that, and I appreciate that you're taking the time to try to understand this, it wasn't just that we got a bad prison sentence. It was that the whole nation was convinced to decide over whether or not Robert Morss is an enemy of the state or not. Half of the nation hates my guts because the Black Mirror told him so. I mean, that is crazy in and of itself. And so with that being said, and the atrocities that are happening everywhere and within every single facility of incarceration in our country, the only thing that we really had to cling to was this wild hope that Trump was going to pardon us.
And he did.
And he did, which was an answered prayer. He didn't have to do that. And I'm hoping that the stories that heard or that reached him about what we were going through is one of the biggest motivating factors for that to take place.
Tell me that moment when you found out. Like, take us to that moment when you realized you were going to be free.
I can only think that feeling had to have been something relatively close to what the Hebrews felt when they watched the Red Sea start to part.
So where were you?
I was in the Pittsburgh halfway house at the time. By then I'd been sent to a halfway house. And when we had been pardoned, I almost had a out-of-body experience where I felt as though that I was watching a movie, but inside of it too. And not many people get a presidential pardon
How
in
did
America.
you find out?
Well, it was on social media and stuff, and people
You
had
saw
their
it on
phones.
X or Instagram.
Right, exactly. And
And you felt out of body experience?
well, think about it. I mean, it's bigger than winning the lottery. It's bigger than anything because a 4-year ballot had come to a conclusion.
Well, I mean, I suppose that's one way to experience that. I guess the extreme position in my, it's like this too shall pass when you go through all that suffering.
Yeah.
Because you had already been out of jail by that time, right?
Yeah, so I left Loretto Prison on August 29th, 2024. I was in the Pittsburgh halfway house, working at a steel company, Glenshaw Steel, for that remainder of that time. And so I was out. I was in the community. I had an ankle monitor on, and kind of wrestling with those demons.
You were working where?
Glenshaw Steel in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
A steel?
Yeah, steel company, yeah.
I didn't know there still were steel companies in Pittsburgh.
There's a few left, man. There's a few left. Obama didn't wipe them all out. But yeah, it was an interesting thing too, where I had to wrestle with similar demons that I had met once I got out of the Army the first time. And I had learned the mistakes that I had made after my time, as a Ranger, I would not repeat again because more was on the line this time. The fate of the nation, and perhaps the world, rests upon the shoulders of men like you and I, who are either going to hold people accountable and expose truth for what it is so that it can set our nation free, or throw a pity party and sit back and say someone else will do it, and then our nation will die because of our ineptitude and indolence.
We might get crucified. I mean, we have different missions, but I think the Article 3 court's protection of the First Amendment is pretty absolute. I think in my case, if I lose my case, it's like the First Amendment itself loses. So the only way that I could lose is if I don't give up.
Right.
If I don't, but in order to not give up, I have to raise like an ungodly amount of money to pay lawyers.
Yeah.
How did you pay your lawyers?
Well, there was a lot of different ways that happened. So Patriot Freedom Project helped us find the defense attorney for the sentencing. I know that my poor mother had to cash out her retirement for the other lawyer, John C. Kiyonaga, who totally dropped the ball and abandoned me completely at my trial. And then the public defender that we had initially, I fired when they said, well, you might look at 8 or 9 years if you take the plea deal, and we can go to trial if you want. We needed to fight. Just like you, I know that we can't give up. It says in this book, and maybe it's a good opportunity for me to give that to you here soon, is that our founding fathers pointed out that should America fail, it would be the detriment to the whole world. So still there is the second book that I've written. Kelly Meggs and I wrote the first book, One Question Remains, while we were locked up in Philly. We had that smuggled out of that prison so that without the confidence that Trump was going to pardon us, it was a message in a bottle. Like a Hail Mary, if you will, that someone would care enough so that January 6th could be fixed. One Question Remains is a book that essentially reveals how January 6th was a lobster trap. And the only complaint that I got from it was that I didn't talk about myself enough. So that's why I spent a lot of time trying to catalog 3.5 years of prison time and still there. So these are yours. They're signed by me. They belong to you. And I know that you'd be a good steward of them and everything that we went through.
American Muckraker. The first chapter is called Suffering. Suffering. And in the end of the chapter called Suffering, which I think is very apropos, because I think with the citizen journalism movement happening, and I just want to read this to you.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll leave you with this. And
okay.
Anything else you want to say, but at the commencement of your ascent, you'd become too well known. So 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, and the same experiences that torture you engender trust with you. And you begin to realize the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And those people asking, what can I do, suddenly are willing to give up their lives for their calling so long as you are willing. And now no defamation or incarceration can stop the momentum. It is your junction. To be awesome, one cannot be afraid, for we cannot live in fear. So a new truth on top of the truth revealed in your reports emerges as the reaction from the opposition starts to become essential for the success of the campaign. Thanks to the reactions and the reactions to the reactions, the reports are disclosed, appear, brought into the consciousness of an ordinary people. The balance of forces are now changed. The role of the oppressor is now reversed. David assumes new strength while Goliath is attacked on all sides. The hunter has become the hunted. And I think, you have the citizen journalism movement in Minnesota.
Okay.
And what people are doing right now.
Yeah.
That's pretty exciting.
You might have something to do with that.
The First Amendment.
That's really all we got. And if that goes, then everything else goes. But
do you think it'll go?
No. Are you kidding me? We've won every world war. We've overcome odds time and time again. You can poison our skies and put poison in our veins and poison in our heads, but we've got God in our hearts.
Do you think I should investigate the chemtrails thing?
I think you should investigate the chemtrails. I think you should investigate federal judges. And I think you should investigate these people that need to stand trial for treason against America.
What shouldn't we investigate?
Let's start with the judges and maybe we can see some justice.
I did say we were going to investigate the prosecutors so they don't start arresting people.
Yeah.
And I think they heard that one. because I usually do what I say I'm going to do. It usually takes a long time to
Well,
get
they hear a lot
started.
more. They listen to us a lot.
Yeah, they're probably watching right now.
Yeah.
But
They hate this because we got two guys that are not willing to give up.
yeah, I'm not constitutionally capable of giving up, but it is hard.
Yeah.
It is painful, isn't it?
It is.
It's hard.
Yeah.
I think being excellent at anything is hard.
Sure.
And it takes a team. Takes a team.
You know Friday Night Lights?
Yeah.
You know the movie? I really love the way that it ends. Spoiler alert, they lose the football game. But their coach the entire time has been asking their team to be perfect. And the entire movie, that's been the struggle. Well, I'm trying to be perfect. Mm-hmm. But at the end, after they fail, the coach says, if you left it all out on the field, you gave it your 100%, then that's all I asked you to do. And that is perfection. So if we give them every single inch we've got, give them the whole 9 yards worth of ammunition, then we will have fulfilled the task upon our hearts, and we will have made our founding fathers proud. And if this country will fail, it is not on us, because we will have the pride and the joy and integrity to look our kids in the eye when they look at us and say, Dad, what went wrong? What did you do to try to save the country? We'll be able to give them a really good story.
Well, I was thinking about that very statement. It's like people are so afraid of death and dying, and we're all going to die eventually. I don't know if I asked you if you think people are conscious of that, and you answered. You said people are, yes, they're watching porn and drinking and distracting because they're conscious of that. I didn't expect that answer. Mm-hmm. But I think one day we're all going to have to answer. We're all going to be close to death. And
yeah. I got a piece of advice on my second deployment, which is that if your life is a book, it's up to you to make it a bestseller. And arguably the best chapter of any story is how the hero dies. And so our responsibility is to be remembered as men, like the pep talk that Maximus Decimus Meridius gets in The Gladiator. Be remembered as men. No matter what happens, die with your boots on and be remembered as men. That's what our founding fathers did. That's what Jesus Christ did. And that's what I know you and I will do. And if we will, many others will follow us, and we will save this country. And because of our work, I think we're going to see the American Renaissance. And maybe we'll save that for part 2.
It's certainly up to us. We'll save that for part 2. Solzhenitsyn says, do not lie, live not by lies. So at the very least, don't lie. What you're talking about is a different level of activity, but at the very least, don't lie.
Sure.
Just don't lie.
Yeah. Because otherwise, you're either fake or gay.
Well, you're fake and gay. Well, listen, I can tolerate a little homosexuality. I've got some friends who happen to be gay.
But you're not.
I won't. No, I'm not. But we all. Don't you know any? We have a friend who happens to be gay.
Sure.
It's out
but
there.
But the complaint that's on your wall is like, he's not even gay. Don't go on dates with this guy.
Don't go with the gays love me because I got that top energy.
Yeah.
Okay. But you got some gayness over here, fine. You got some fakeness over there. Okay, well, that's,
over there.
To tolerate some phoniness in social settings.
Sure.
Especially here in Palm Beach Island, that's for damn sure. But when you combined fake and gay together, we got a problem, fellas.
Sure.
We got a situation.
Yeah.
When you have homosexuality and phoniness combined, and by the way, a lot of the guys in D.C., we know how that works.
Oh.
But listen, on a serious note, I think just don't lie.
Yeah.
Is one. But hey, it's great to meet you again. I hope to have you back.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
It's a pleasure.
Pleasure. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining all of you for this long edition of My Price is My Life. We'll see you Tuesday at 1 o'clock every week. On Tuesday at 1 o'clock, we're breaking our next bombshell investigation. Subscribe, tune in live. Tuesday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, we break our next investigative report. We'll see you then. This is James O'Keefe. You know me for exposing the truth and holding the corrupt elite accountable. But today I want to talk to you about protecting your own freedom, your retirement. Now, gold is soaring above $4,200 an ounce right now and climbing towards $5,000. That's up over 45% this year alone, with silver closing in on $60 an ounce. Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and major banks are now forecasting gold between $5,000 and $6,000 within the next 6 to 12 months. And that's why I've partnered with American Independence Gold, a veteran-owned company where proceeds from every sale help support the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. And right now, my followers get a free gold bar with every purchase of $10,000 or more. Go to O'KeefeMediaGold.com, that's O'KeefeMediaGold.com, or call 833-324-4653. That's 833-324-GOLD. This is James O'Keefe, where freedom isn't given, it's secured. This is not financial advice. Consult a professional before making investment decisions. All right, let's talk healthcare, because the system is a total mess. Do you really trust your insurance company? You're paying outrageous premiums, and months later, the bills still keep coming. Confusing networks, denied claims, surprise fees, now rates they're saying might go up 20% or more. And did you know that medical debt is the #1 cause of bankruptcy? Those are some of the many reasons why I suggest switching from traditional health insurance to Impact Health Sharing. Impact Health Sharing is a powerful health sharing community that takes the middleman and the corporate profit-driven bureaucracies out of your healthcare and puts the power back in your hands. You can save up to 50% and get clear costs, real savings, and no woke nonsense. You can pick any doctor, no surprise bills, 24/7 telehealth, maternity support. Take control of your healthcare before the system decides for you. Go to ImpactOMG.com to learn more and get your free quote in seconds, or call 855-378-6777 now. That's ImpactOMG.com, ImpactOMG.com. Impact Health Sharing, built differently. All right, let's talk healthcare. We're standing up to the powers that tried to discredit us, silence us, smear us, raid us, and throw us in jail. They've awakened a sleeping giant. We're building a movement of transparency and accountability in both the public and private sectors, because we run from nothing, we hide from nothing. And when you join and get your full access pass, you fuel a movement for truth. We are the media now. We're standing up to the powers that tried to discredit us, silence us, smear us, raid us, and throw us in jail. They've awakened a sleeping giant. We're building a movement of transparency and accountability in both the public and private sectors, because we run from nothing, we hide from nothing. And when you join and get your full access pass, you fuel a movement for truth. We are the media